approval of minutes.
Yeah, well, so before we start, we just need to just do a quick roll call to make sure. So Lorraine,
Thank you.
Jerry Abrahams,
Present.
Alexander Dom will not be attending. Tim Hodges,
Here.
Kathy McKinnon,
Here.
George Perez, Franklin Perry, and Sarah Sanders.
Here.
okay, thank you. So as Sarah mentioned, the first resolution this morning is to permit CHFA to procure a warehouse loan facility to help manage the pooling of single-family loans into mortgage-backed securities. CHFA currently uses taxable bonds and the ITA, if needed, to buy loans from our participating lenders and reimburse the taxable proceeds with tax-exempt proceeds when the MBS are delivered. The taxable bond facility is scheduled to mature on May 15. Based on the indications CHFA received, it is more advantageous for CHFA to pursue a direct line with a lender than issuing a taxable bond, as it is less expensive. The request, if approved, will allow CHFA to procure one or more facilities with an aggregate amount of not to exceed 75 million and a term not exceeding 3 years. I'll be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Azim, just one quick question.
Sure.
Obviously, this makes a lot of sense, but just out of curiosity, what if you did a bond? So the facility is at SOFR plus 65. If you did a bond, what do you think that would cost?
Right now, it's tough to say. We think that, you know, because the nature of the bond will be short, we probably will get a similar execution or similar rate than a direct line, because this is just more about you know, an investor wanting to get a certain amount of return based on the duration. So my expectation would be around, you know, SOFR plus 60, SOFR plus 70.
So this is like simpler. I mean, clearly it's so much easier.
This is
It's so much
definitely
better than doing a bond,
simpler.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
at a minimum, if we do not utilize the bond execution, we will save at least 187,000.
Yeah.
At least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was more curious than anything else. Obviously, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Have you already selected a bank and did you bid it? And how do you know the rate?
Oh, no, we have not. So the way we do it is whenever that we have something, we have a request of this nature, what we would do is we will do our, you know, quote unquote investigation, check what indication, you know, a lender will willing to provide. And then we will inform to them that before we procure any line, we do need to seek board approval. So the intent is, if the board approves this morning the request, we would issue a bid this afternoon.
Oh, good. And if you could remind me, because this sounded familiar, and I guess we approved some other lines. Can you remind me of the size of those and who the banks are?
Right. So last year, CHFA did request for the board to approve 2 lines. The nature and the vehicle looks similar, and I think that's the reason why Sarah is asking the question. So last year, when we asked the board to approve 2 lines, they were for CHFA to preserve single-family loan prepayment. And the reason behind it is because CHFA was in fact experiencing higher than normal asset runoff. So it is our intent to preserve those prepayment to allow us to then recycle those proceeds into new single-family loans. So for us to ensure that we have the ability to preserve those prepayments and to reduce our interest costs, because until we preserve those prepayments, we were experiencing negative carry. We entered into 2 lines, one with US Bank, one with Wells Fargo, and the aggregate for both lines was $175 million.
So you have a lending agreement that you use. It has been my experience that sometimes the terms and conditions the banks want to put in these agreements can vary, and it can be a deciding factor. Sometimes they put in some onerous provisions, but you've probably been through those other 2 lines already.
Right. No, I agreed. So the 2 lines that we entered into, because those lines were for loan prepayment preservation, the line was secured with those prepayments. So it is a cash collateralized execution. In this situation, because the new line, this warehouse loan facility, is solely to manage our pipeline management. So the security is only CHFA's GO.
So higher cost. Go ahead, Kathy.
How do you foresee the sort of rising interest rates affecting this? The projected savings, does that anticipate an increase in interest rates?
Yeah, I think when it comes to any type of borrowing, especially when it is a variable rate, our savings would vary. So as interest rate rise, the savings, of course, will be less than when the interest rate is lower. But keep in mind, what we're trying to do here is, if in fact that we do have another line, and if say that we in fact try to lock in a fixed rate, we probably would be paying something much higher anyways because of the current rate environment.
Okay.
Does CHFA have a GO rating? So you're saying this is basically a general obligation of CHFA. Does CHFA have a rating on the GO credit?
CHFA doesn't have an underlying rating. So our rating is based solely on our general resolution. Based on the discussion we have had with providers that are interested in providing us a line, they will be looking towards the general resolution rating as a basis to lend us the money.
Any other questions? May I have a motion?
I'll move, Chair Abrams. I'll
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call vote.
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
George Perez,
I will abstain since I missed the whole discussion because I was late.
Franklin Perry,
I will abstain as well for the same reasons expressed by the commissioner.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
2 abstention.
Thank you. The next item is our monthly financial reports. Allison.
Good morning, all. Before you are the financial reports for the first month of the year. On the revenue side, mortgage loan and investment interest revenue are coming in slightly below budget for the first month and 1.6 million lower than last year. The year-over-year variances continue to be driven by reduction in our program assets, which are approximately $240 million lower than they were the same time last year. On the expense side, bond interest expense is slightly below budget for the month and 1.3 million lower than last year. The authority's outstanding bonds as of January 31st are $360 million lower than last January. Administrative expenses are coming in 705,000 under budget and 138,000 higher than prior year. When you exclude salaries and benefits of 2.3 million, our current year-to-date expenses are $67,000 lower than last year. Our bond issuance costs are 459,000 below budget. Our first bond sale of the year is scheduled to close next month. And at that time is when we'll be recognizing the costs associated with that sale. And lastly, the change in net position is above target by $970,000. Are there any questions?
Why are our expenses, I understand why bond expenses are low. That's kind of a timing. I understand why our interest margins are lower, but why are our staffing costs lower than budget?
Well,
Fill positions.
Yeah, a good chunk of that is, we're approved for 148 positions. And as of January, we only had 136 FTEs. So a big part of that is we haven't filled all the positions that we're currently recruiting for. And some of them, the other expenses are just timing.
Right. Bond expense is timing.
Yeah, that certainly so.
I have a question since I don't know if my hand is up on that, even though I try to bring it up.
Yep,
as a-
it is up, Commissioner.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly, right? When you talk about expenses, you say administrative expenses are coming in 705,000 under budget, which is a nice little round number, and 138,000 higher than the year. So if I understood that correctly, you're saying we're under budget on 705,000, but we're still 138,000 higher than we were last year, right?
Yes,
Okay, so it's not like we're over budget 138. We're still under budget, but even though we're under budget, we're spending more money this year than we did last year.
correct.
Okay, and I don't mean that negative. I just want to make sure I understand the
Yes,
wording.
that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Right.
But
mean-
to follow up on the commissioner's observation, well under budget, more money than last year, but our production's lower.
And do we know the reason?
Well,
Considering that we haven't filled every staff, considering that production's lower, is it simply because we kept the same amount of people, but we're not,
I'm not sure I understand.
we're under budget,
Mhm.
but we're still spending more money than last year, which is not saying that's negative. I'm trying to
Yes.
understand why. Is it because we still have the same amount of staff that we had last year,
Well,
but salary increased?
yes, there's definitely.
What was it that,
There's
yeah.
salary increases in there, and the fringe rates change every July 1st. So as of July 1st of last year, they were higher than they were of July the prior year.
You haven't been hit with retirements yet then, because the way the other agencies, because I mean, ours actually went down a little bit, only because of the retirements.
When we make payouts for retirements, they actually get coded right against our compensated absence liability and do not hit our P&L.
And that's what I mean, because like, for instance, I've had 26% of my staff turnover, right?
Mhm.
And so I'm bringing new people. Well, my pension cost for them is much less than my pension cost would be for those people who worked there 35 years, right? So
We're paying the same fringe rate, though.
no matter what, it
yes.
seems like, right? Okay.
Right,
And that's something that you don't control. That controller sends you that number. Right?
correct.
And all I'm saying is, what I'm saying is my numbers gone down a little bit, not much, to be honest with you. So I expected that to happen in other agencies as people retire and we replace them with new people. But I guess we haven't caught up to that cycle yet.
And then Commissioner and Jerry, keep in mind what we are doing is we are comparing it to January of last year. So when we say year over year, 138,000, we're literally taking what we experienced January of 21 versus January of 22. And of course, when you have a different fringe rate, you have, as we're trying to staff up, that there is going to be that difference.
I appreciate that, and I understand that. But part of our role is to make sure that we did ask questions, right? And that we
Sure, no,
review this
and
stuff.
I think that what we're trying to do is we want to make sure that we provide clarity whenever possible.
Right. So in an event, and I don't expect this ever to happen, let's have an issue, and we all get an interview and say, well, what are you guys were doing there besides sleeping on the job, right? You guys meaning the board.
I would just
So-
like to comment on CHFA budgeting in general. We saw the results for the fiscal year last month, and the record has been CHFA significantly outperforms budget, and in part because of the way the budgeting is done at CHFA. So it's a recurring theme, and it goes to the way budgeting is done. Part of me thinks, maybe the budgets are too conservative at some level, but I know Hazim has explained how it works. But we outperformed at the bottom line net position significantly the budget.
Yeah, and I think over the years that's part of the reason as to why we were putting a lot of emphasis trying to provide committee our actuals and month over month, year over year. So when you look at Allison's report, the last page, there is in fact a column to reflect the actual that we expended, in every category for that particular period. Just to eliminate the noise caused by the budget.
So maybe it's almost better to compare actuals to actuals than to budget, because we always outperform our budget given the way we budget. But just an observation.
But that's primarily true because we don't fill the positions, right? But like for instance, this year, we're going to have issues with interest expense, right? Because I don't think we budgeted that the interest rate's going to increase by 50 basis points, which is my prediction that by the end of the year, if not in March, it's going to increase by 50 basis points. And that will have an impact on what we pay, not by 50 basis points, but it will have an impact. And if you look at regular mortgage numbers this year alone, I mean, at the beginning, in December, they were like, I don't know, let's say 3%. They're now like 3.8. As in a couple months. So that's going to impact when we sell bonds or when we go to the market. So that's why when the question that whoever asked about the line of credit, how the interest is going to impact it, the right answer should have been, yes, it's going to impact it. But that's a business decision we need to make. What do we get for it, and what we don't do if we don't do it, right? So you're going to see that interest expense line item is probably not going to hit budget this year.
There will be there will be corresponding. So as interest expense rise, we will also see a rise in investment income.
But I bet you anything in the world is not going to be proportionally anywhere near, depending on the value, obviously.
Right.
But it's not dollar for dollar. It's not even 50 cents on the dollar. I can assure you that. And not because I'm the commissioner. I was a former banker.
Right.
And with banks giving up overdraft fees, they're going to make it up somewhere else.
That's something to watch out for with the interest rates going up. Any more questions on the financial reports?
One comment. Traditionally, when interest rates, long-term rates have gone up, the business model of using tax exempt with taxable, executions like mortgage loans actually helps housing finance agencies, because unless there's significant rate compression, the differential between tax exempt and taxable executions actually makes, at higher rates, makes the HFA business model more competitive than the conventional market. So, I think that as Hazim said, as interest rates trend up, we shouldn't necessarily see a decline in our profitability because we are basing our rates on the market, the mortgage rates.
Yes, I have heard that said in the past, that actually CHFAs do better, or HFAs do better in a higher interest rate market.
Well,
I
that's really the
totally agree
hope,
with
right?
that.
Isn't that really our challenge? Really isn't so much budgeting. Challenge has been production, right? I mean, really, I would be less. I would rather us be slightly over budget, but if our production was just was really high, because it feels, I know the market's interest rates are low, and our target buyers are kind of being priced out of the market, and there's lots of other options, so our product isn't needed, right? And there's only so much we can do on the multifamily side, just with single family side. But we want, we're here to do single family production, and what's been most frustrating to me is not so much the budget, it's just we can't purchase enough loans. So.
And I was gonna say, I totally agree with that for two reasons. One, Jerry already covered, but the only thing I will add to that is that part of the reason that that's going to be an issue, regardless of rate, is because of the supply chain. Because what you have it is developers willing to build, but they can't get the workforce, they can't get the supply. So that's another challenge besides the actual inventory. You can't produce the inventory because you can't find the people or lumber, for instance. Or even now, Windows used to take 4 to 6 weeks. Now they're taking 12 to 18 weeks. And I agree also with the tax exempt stuff. But unless you meaning us collectively, we budgeted for an increase in rates in our budget, and we came close to what it's really going to be. Yeah, that's true what you're saying, but there's still going to be a difference. And anybody who thinks that's not the case, well, I don't want to insult anybody, but I got a bridge to sell you. So, there's a lot of things that in theory work beautiful, but in practicality works a little different. And yes, I totally agree, because I don't want anybody thinking that I fell down and hit my head this morning, that because of that tax exempt, that impact on entities like us is much different than entities that don't have that ability. Been a good discussion.
Yeah.
As it should be.
Any other questions on the financial reports? We'll go on to delinquency and forbearance.
Okay, good morning. For the month of January, the authority purchased 151 loans totaling $33 million, of which 129 of those loans totaling $27 million were securitized, or 85% of our production. The remaining 22 loans totaling $5.7 million were whole loans. The average loan size was $218,000. The January month-end mortgage-backed security portfolio balance was $2.1 million, which was a decrease of $6.7 million over the prior month. Our whole loan portfolio declined by 108 loans, totaling $13.8 million, ending at a December balance of $1.2 billion. Our overall delinquency rate decreased by 8 basis points to 2.73%, and the carrying balance for loans in foreclosure year over year decreased by $9.7 million to $29 million, while the number of loans in foreclosure declined by 70. The authority also funded 78 down payment assistance loans in January, totaling just over $1 million. The average loan size was $13,600, and about half of our January borrowers took advantage of the down payment assistance program. With regard to single family loans in forbearance, we had 135 whole loan borrowers in forbearance, totaling $99,000 of monthly P&I on about $16.5 million of principal balance, which makes up about 1.2% of our whole loan portfolio. And approximately 14% of those borrowers did make a payment in December, even though they were in forbearance. And then in January, we had to decline another 11 loans to 124 loans in forbearance. With regard to multifamily, there were no new loans closed in January in our multifamily portfolio. The overall portfolio declined by 2 loans to 554 loans, with a UPB balance of $1.33 billion. Our permanent delinquency loans declined by 1 to 7, and we had 1 construction loan delinquency, for an overall delinquency rate for our multifamily portfolio of 1%. And the multifamily portfolio didn't have any loans in forbearance. Any questions?
You know, maybe it's in here, but has our average loan size on single family gone up with the increase in housing prices?
It's been slowly increasing over the past year. I mean, it was fairly common, say a little more a year ago. Our average loan size was around 85,000. And more recently, it's been up north of 200,000. And I think last month it was 216,000. So it's been slowly increasing, as has the size of our down payment assistance loans.
Yeah, Sarah, just to add to that for John. So back in February of 21, the average loan size for our first mortgage reservation was around $200,593. And last month, the average reservation was $223,544. And then down payment went up from $12,941 on average to $15,170.
I think we expanded, didn't we expand what they could borrow for?
Yeah, yes. That's why we also saw a much higher participation. So our participation right now is greater than 75%.
Any questions on this report? Next item is approval of the minutes of the Finance and Audit Committee of January 27th. May I have a motion? Or excuse me, yeah, motion, yep.
So moved.
Second? Roll call vote?
Second.
Oh, second, I guess second? No. Roll call
Yes,
vote?
second, Tim Hodges.
Tim, thank you.
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders,
Yes.
unanimous.
Any other matters to discuss? Anything else people want to bring up? With that, I make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. See you on the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you.